We could go on and on about the amazing things that are going to occur in the last days. Revelation 6, verse 12 talks about a great earthquake and the stars of heaven falling unto the earth. It says, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Think of the stars falling from heaven. But I wonder, is this symbolically speaking of the angels falling, the stars falling from heaven, coming again to earth? Jesus said in Matthew 24, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Friends, if Jesus Christ did not come again, everyone on this planet would be destroyed during those times when the stars fall from heaven. So yes, there are going to be catastrophic events. Now the question is, when will these things occur? You know, his disciples asked Jesus, Matthew 24, what will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus gave them certain signs. One of the signs is incredible. He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be when the Son of Man returns again. As it was in the days of Noah. Let us turn to our Bible, and we're going to see something fantastic. Let us look as it was in the days of Noah. And then you will know whether this planet X that is coming in this 21st century is that time. Is it here? Let us go back to the beginning, and we shall see. We turn to the book of Genesis, chapter 6. Let us see what God says about planet X and those that come in its wake. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Verse 4 says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now, my friends, let's look at this passage very carefully. First of all, we find it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. If we study this very carefully, we will find out that the sons of God are the fallen angels. Literally, those angels which fell from heaven, the stars that fell from heaven. And these wicked devils, these wicked demons, led, of course, by, you might say, Apollyon and Abaddon, the Satan entity, the dragon, the serpent, as he's called in the Bible. They saw that the daughters of men, in other words, human beings, women, human beings, were very pretty, were beautiful. And they didn't just ask them to marry them, they took, they seized, they abducted whomsoever they chose. And from these, it says in verse 4, they had children. And those children were like giants, mighty men, the men of old, men of renown, the ancient gods and goddesses, were they not? Now, what we need to understand there is that word giants in the Bible, there are really two words if you look at the meaning. First of all, there is the word the Nephilim. The giants were the Nephilim. And then there's the word the Rephaim. The Rephaim. Nephilim literally means the fallen ones, the angels that fell from their first estate. But there's more than that. They were also, we see in the book of Deuteronomy, they were also called the Rephaim. What does that mean? It means the dead. In fact, Deuteronomy says that these fallen angels were of the congregation of the dead. They were literally walking dead. So we see then there were giants in the earth in those days. But there's a greater meaning. They weren't just large in physical stature and size. They were super intelligent. They were supernatural beings. They were a combination, a hybrid of human and devil. Does that shock you? It did me when I began to study this passage of Scripture. But there can be no doubt about it. Now it's interesting when we study this, we see that Noah, on the other hand, was a just man. He walked with God, and he was perfect in his generations. What does that mean? It doesn't mean he was perfect, that he had no sin. There is no one who has ever come to earth who had no sin, who came as a man except Jesus Christ. And Noah was no exception. What does it mean that he was perfect in his generations? It means, unlike the rest of mankind, Noah was unpolluted in his blood. His blood was unspotted. His DNA was perfect. It was right from Adam and Eve in the garden, in that lineage. He had no demon blood in him. He had nothing of essence of the sons of God and the daughters of men when they bred together. He was not one of the giants. He was not of the Nephilim. He was not of the Rephaim. He was perfect in his race. And that is the very meaning of that word, if you will study the word generations there. His race, his racial type. He was perfect because he was unspotted. Now, with the rest of the earth, God repented that he had made it. And he caused a great flood to come on the face of the earth. And only Noah and his family who went into the ark were saved. Now it's interesting that there are many legends and stories that came up about this time. And we know that there are books. And people are now saying, oh, these were these sons of God, these giants, these mighty men of old, men of renown. They must have been the ancient astronauts. They must have been the ancient gods and goddesses that came to earth. And so people try to put a good light on this, not understanding the Word of God. Here's some books, for example. Here is a book that sold millions of copies back some years ago called Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. This caused incredible commotion. Here's another book called In Search of Ancient Mysteries. Did man begin on earth, or was he sent here from other worlds? It asks the questions. Here's a book by a man named Eric Norman called Gods, Demons, and Space Chariots. The sons of gods fell from space. Were they aliens from outer space? Then there is a man named Velikovsky who's written about the catastrophes that came upon the earth about this time. Now what we have to understand, my friends, is this, that in the occult literature, in the occult secret doctrine, it is stated that there is a correspondence between the stars, the planets, the heavenly bodies, and mankind. They say, as above, so below. We need to look at this just a moment and see what we can discover about the meaning of this. Because the Bible talks a lot about stars falling from earth. Jesus said of Satan or Lucifer, he said, I beheld Satan like lightning fall from heaven. What does this mean? Can a man be a star? Did you know that Aleister Crowley, the man who called himself the B666, a head of a form of a church of Satan, the OTO, head of the Illuminati of Europe at the turn of the 20th century, Mr. Crowley said this. He said, every man and woman is a star. He didn't mean that we were Hollywood actresses and actors. No, he meant that we correspond with the planets. Because in occult astrology, it is believed that the stars affect your behavior. And it is believed even that there is a star for every person, and that every person is a star. And that the devil and all of his angels then would be stars as well. Of course, we know that there are many people who believe in astrology today. I remember that President Ronald Reagan and his wife Nancy Reagan so much believed in astrology that his entire presidential calendar was based on what the Reagan's astrologer told them would be the most fortunate dates and times. He could not meet with world leaders until and when Nancy Reagan first checked with her astrologer. So there are many, many millions of people who believe in occult astrology. But there's more to this. You see, in the book Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike, the former Sovereign Grand Commander of Universal Freemasonry, stated this. He said on page 670, the argument was that the heavens and the stars which make part of them are animated because, he said, they possess a portion of the universal soul. And therefore, said Pike, they are intelligent beings because that universal soul, part whereof they possess, is supremely intelligent, and they share divinity with universal nature. The stars are divine, and we here on earth then are represented by the stars. And thus the entities from heaven are stars, including the fallen stars. Now, if we go back to the ancient historical literature, including the records of Babylon, Greece, Rome, but particularly Babylon and Egypt, we're going to see records of these star deities, these star gods and goddesses, these mighty men of old that we are told fell from the heavens. Yes, the ancient records of false religions actually record and tell us that there were strange beings that came in what appeared to be spaceships or UFOs. They fell from the heavens. There was the beast that fell into the sea and rose up out of the sea, and that would correspond to Revelation 13 verse 1, the beast that rises up out of the sea. And they had strange craft, and they were giants, and they had supernatural powers. And yes, it is said that they took of those whom they wanted the daughters of men. And even the ancient religions admit this. But what they don't admit is that these were in fact the fallen angels, the devils. They say they were gods and goddesses and deities, and they began to worship them all the way up to the Tower of Babel and even afterwards. These were the giants that were worshiped by people, the mighty men of old. They were in fact representatives of the devils that had fallen from their first estate, which was heaven. Here's some illustrations to prove this to you. Here is a Sumerian engraving discovered on a clay cylinder. It seems to indicate some kind of an ancient flying craft floating above the ground with wings. And some have even said they can see the solar panels that are involved. Here is in stone a carving of the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda. And by the way, the very name Ahura, you might remember, is one of the characters from the Star Trek series. Many of the NASA space flights and Star Wars and Star Trek characters came from the names and the exploits of these ancient deities, these fallen angels. But here is Ahura Mazda in what appears to be some kind of a circular object or craft which has a landing platform on it. Notice the wings of this strange god. Then again, we have some other pictures of this. Here, from the South American and Central American area of this globe, we have what has been said to be a Mayan from the Maya tribe, the Mayan astronaut. The Mayan astronaut. It is said that these ancient deities, these gods and goddesses, these interplanetary beings that came to this planet also left us incredible monuments such as the pyramids and Stonehenge in Great Britain. Here we have some medallions, and notice what they appear to be. The first figure here is the divided bull. And then we have a tree on the right which represents Nimrod, the mighty one who built the Tower of Babel. Notice the bull, the man who had horns and yet was a bull, but he's torn asunder. He's torn asunder, of course, as were all of the gods and the goddesses, these Nephilim, the Rephaim, the giants. When the flood came, they were destroyed. And I believe this ancient coin, and that's what this basically is, or medallion, indicates. You notice the little dolphin above the head of this ancient beast. He was rendered asunder, cut asunder in half when the flood came and killed them all. Here we have what appears to be a king riding a dragon. And notice the strange occultic code there in the book. Is this not Apollyon, Abaddon, Satan? Here's a famous painting. It seems to be a woman lying on a bed while she is being tormented by devils. Is this some indication all the way back to Genesis, where the sons of God, meaning the fallen angels, had sexual intercourse, relations, took whoever they wanted of the women of earth, and as Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah? And we have to understand too, when we return to the Bible, it says there were giants in those days and afterwards. Now, for some reason or other, even after the flood, God allowed some of these giants to come back, to return for whatever reason. For example, in the book of Deuteronomy and the books of the Kings and Exodus, we read about them. We read about the Anakim. I think Zechariah Sitchin, a very well-known author today, who talks about the planet Nibiru coming back, sort of planet X. He calls them the Anunnaki, but the Bible calls them the Anakim. We know of the scouts of Joshua, and they came upon men who appeared to be giants, and they said, "We are like grasshoppers in their sight." We know of Goliath, the giant that was slain by David. The Bible talks about Og, king of Bashan. Did you know that he was over 18 foot tall, according to the Bible? 18 foot tall. Yes, these were mighty men, but they were more than that. I believe they were men whose blood was tainted, and maybe God, for punishment, turned them into beast. Half men, half beast. Look at all of these mythological creatures, the gods and the goddesses, and the creatures with their supposedly supernatural powers that the ancients tell us about. And many men today are now writing books and occult histories, and they're writing of these mythologies, and they're telling us these gods and goddesses are going to return again, even in the form of interplanetary extraterrestrials. Here is a picture of Mithra, Diana, the Hindu goddess Kali, the Hindu deity Ganesha. There's the Hindu god Krishna. Here we have a half man, half beast. We have Medusa, the goddess whose entire head or scalp was full of serpents or snakes. Athena, she is the goddess that sits atop the Capitol building of the United States even today. Imagine that connection. Here is Atlas. It is said he held up the world. Cyclops, who had an all-seeing eye in his forehead. Apollo and Daphne. Hercules, the strongest of the gods for all time. Icarus. Scylla. The famous Spanish painter Goya pictured Satan as a giant. And look at the giant that Goya painted. And there are more. Here from an ancient occult book is Pan, the horned god with cloven hoofs and a face like the sun and horns. And notice he's playing his bagpipe. And to the side of him is, of course, the star. He is a fallen star, we're told. Here, yet again, is another strange creature, Pan, god of the forest. This is in the National Library of Paris, France. Here we see the Orion constellation, And there you see a medallion in the corner, and that is of the ancient Norse goddess Frigg. Here we have other cloven hoof angels and a Latin inscription. These angels are very common in Freemasonry. Notice, if you will, please, their cloven hoofs and what appears to be some kind of a serpentine lower half of the body. Are these not fallen angels? From ancient Babylon, we have these bulls. Notice the head of the man, body of the bull, and they're winged creatures as well. Here we have a sphinx-like creature. Then we have Anubis, the jackal-headed god. Baphomet, whom it is said the Masons and the Knights Templar worshiped. Look at the star in his forehead. We have the Minotaur and many other mythological creatures. Were these the fallen angels? Do they represent the fallen angels who came to earth? And is Planet X indicative of these creatures? Recently, Mason, in fact, he's the cameraman for this production today, gave me a copy of this book. He said, Tex, you will find this very interesting. It's called The Ultimate Alien Agenda by James Walden, a doctor. It talks about the re-engineering of mankind. If you look very carefully at this book, you'll see the eye of the serpent and the scaly green appearance of the book. It's interesting. He says about the aliens that are coming and supposedly abducting women with their UFOs and their spacecraft and so forth. He believes they are aliens that were once here who seeded men on earth. And the author says that must be why he is so drawn, attracted to serpents. Many people are attracted to serpents today, it seems. And we even see popular music stars like Britney Spears, who performs with a albino python snake wrapped around her neck. It was thought that the great gods and goddesses, the sons of God, the fallen stars, it is said that they represented the mighty serpent because he was the serpent of wisdom, and they too are like serpents of wisdom. Tertullian, one of the early Christian, one of our forefathers, you might say, stated this. He said, the dragon, or Satan, became the supreme object of worship of the pagans. He said that Satan, in the form of the dragon or the serpent, occupied a prominent place in the Egyptian mysteries and also those of Greece. These heretics, said Tertullian, magnify the serpent to such a degree as to prefer him even to Christ himself, for he, say they, gave us the first knowledge of good and evil. So we see then who is really represented by the fallen angels. Is it not the serpent? Is it not the devil? And yet we're being told that there is a planet coming from outer space headed this way. And when it comes, there might be not only incredible planetary changes on this earth in the form of catastrophe, but that aliens from outer space, entities that were once here before as gods and goddesses, and the giants, the Nephilim, they're back. They're back. And they're here because they love us. And they're the serpents of wisdom who want to share their divinity with us. You can see the lies of the devil and all these things. And now let's look. Throughout history, we've seen the story of these devils represented. Here is a dragon painting that can be seen in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings in Thebes, central Egypt. Here we have an ancient painting and occultic-like a code of Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail. Notice it has 3 horns on its head. That is the father god, the mother goddess, and their son, who is to come, the Antichrist. Even here in the United States, the serpent was worshipped. Here is a very interesting picture that I know you'll find of fascination. Coiled over 1,254 feet. This is the Great Serpent Mound in the state of Ohio. No one knows how it got there. Was it Native American Indians? But someone worshiped the serpent, and we can see the mounds, the signs on the planet. Now, the serpent has been worshipped in many ways, and these gods who are supposedly returning with this planet Earth will come in many forms as well. And let's look at some of the forms in which the serpent is said to be coming very soon in conjunction with planet X. Here is a being that appears to be some kind of a Babylonian fish god. Here we have the Egyptian goddess Isis. Notice the small fishtail in her headdress. And here we have the Babylonian god Yanes. That is spelled O-A-N-N-E-S. Yanes. He was a fishtail amphibious being from the heavens. The Babylonians said he founded civilization on earth. Yes, they say the aliens from outer space founded mankind's civilization, brought us great cities, brought us the monuments, even the Tower of Babel. Notice the fish headdress. You'll remember the Philistines. King Saul was killed by the Philistines, and they cut off his head, and they took his head into the temple of Dagon. And who was Dagon or Dagon? Well, here we find examples of Dagon. Dagon, in fact, was Yanis, the fish god of the Philistines. And by the way, if you want to see the sign of Dagon today, just look at a modern picture of the Pope of Rome. Notice the fishtail headdress. So Yanis, the ancient fish god of the Philistines, Dagon, is still being worshipped even today at the Vatican in their ceremonial dress. As far as the goddess rising up out of the sea, the great fish god, here's some other examples from a book we have entitled Signs and Symbols. Here is Capricornus, the sea god and goatfish. The Bible talks about Leviathan. Here is another image of Dagon. And then we have Scylla, a many-necked and headed dragon from the sea. We have the mermaid who rises up. We have Triton. All of these are forms of the beast who fell into the sea, the star that fell into the sea. Among the tribes of Africa, there is a tribe called the Dogon. Notice the similarity, the Dagon or Dagon and the Dogon. And the Dogon said that many, many eons ago, from outer space, came some strange amphibious fish god creatures. They came in a spacecraft shaped like an obelisk. And these creatures they call the Nomo. They were amphibian gods, and they had amphibious feet and hands. And these fish god they worshipped. They came, they said, from a star far off, hotter than our sun, called Sirius, S-I-R-I-U-S, Sirius. Sirius, they said, had another planet, let's just call it Sirius B, that circulated or orbited around it. And it was said that there is even a third planet, an invisible star, circling around Sirius. In fact, Sirius has been worshipped for thousands of years, my friends. The Masons today worship the blazing star from Sirius. The ancient Egyptians worshipped the planet or the star Sirius, and from it came the name of their great sun god, Osiris, and the name of their goddess, Isis. Now this planet or star Sirius a man named Robert K.G. Temple wrote a book about. In 1976, this book caused an incredible international interest in the planet Sirius. Now, I want you to remember that Mr. Hazelwood and a number of other pseudo-astronomers are saying today that it is the planet Sirius that is coming, that is the planet X that is headed, that is the dead for planet Earth, that is the dark red star on a collision course with this Earth. Some others, such as Zechariah Sitchin, call it Nibiru. All in all, Hazelwood said there are 34 names, but I have found 71 names so far in the occult literature for planet X. Certainly, though, Sirius has great impact because of its being embraced by Freemasonry and the Masonic lodges around the world. Here is a picture, actually a drawing, by this African tribe. No one knows how they were able to understand that this star, Sirius, would have a Sirius B satellite or star circulating or orbiting around it. This is an actual drawing that the Dogon tribe of Africa in Mali and West Africa drew. And yet this has been transmitted to them orally for generations and generations, even before astronomers were able to sight this millions of miles away. Here's a drawing of the strange spacecraft that they said came down from the heavens, and these amphibious beast fish gods fell into the sea and then came up out of and were able to do supernatural acts. And even today the Dogon worship these beings which they call the Nomo. Here's a picture of Albert Pike. Let me tell you a little bit about Albert Pike, the former Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry. Of course, the house of the temple that he caused to be built is just 13 blocks from the White House. Now, in every temple of the Masons, in every lodge, is, of course, the blazing star of Sirius. Now, Sirius in the Egyptian religion was always worshipped as the great star god who was Lord of the underworld. Isn't that interesting that Masons would worship this same being known as the blazing star? And their pentagram, the pentagram of the planet, the star god Sirius, is found in almost every Masonic lodge today, as well as the great temple of the Mormons in Salt Lake City. Here from France was a movie called Forces Occultes that discussed Masonry and this planet. Now, Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the Egyptians, was thought to be from the planet or the star Sirius. And then we determined that there is another tribe in Africa whose ancient lore and legend told them that there was a god to be worshipped who came from the I star, E-Y-E, and had an all-seeing eye.